Hello friends, tonight we're going to take a look at the HK45 full size. This will be a re-review and a 4,000 round update. My original video looked like purest ass, so hopefully this one will be at least a slight improvement. When we last looked at this series, we were discussing the HK45 Compact. That's a pistol steeped in myth and lore to the point that we aren't quite sure of its origin and backstory. It's very mysterious, like the story was never finished. Maybe George R.R. Martin is writing a book about it that will never see the light of day. Perhaps the deep ones used mind control to erase any evidence of its creation. Or maybe the gun community has no fucking sense of academic rigor and does no research before passing off a forum anecdote as fact. Yeah, it's definitely the last one, isn't it? The full-size version of the pistol is even more mysterious than the small one. And I use the word small very loosely. It's smaller in the way that 3 Doors Down is less shitty than Disturbed. It's all fucking relative, isn't it? Wow, it's a really up-to-date reference, isn't it? For all you kids out there, 2 radio rock bands from the early 2000s, you kids will definitely get that one. It's a hip reference if I ever heard one. Mostly, I know that making fun of fake, horrible ballsack metal, which isn't really metal at all, will rankle Springfield XD owners. So I can't help myself. So please display your anger in the comments below via a long, rambling message with baffling punctuation and extreme overuse of ellipses. You ever notice that white guys over the age of 45, they act like they found out about ellipses yesterday? They treat ellipses like it's fucking Texas Pete. That shit's going on everything. Anyway, it is said by the great forum sages, many of whom use far too many ellipses, while displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of what they do. It is said that this gun came from the same project that produced the HK45 Compact, or it perhaps preceded it. Most of the evidence points to that being true, at least. In the Compact video, I asked for citations, hard proof as to the history of the HK45. My plan was to provide that info when I made this video, but no one provided any. I heard a lot of, well, I read this on the HK Pro forum, and Big Dick Dog 69's uncle's cousin's sister was the receptionist at HK, and she saw that it was developed by a team of moon men visiting Earth for the weekend. Lots of speculation, but no proof. And a lot of people got mad. Most of them forum-dwelling troglodytes, no doubt. I'm still asking for it. Get me hard info, not forum lore, and I'll put it in an update video. I would love to. I want to know more about these guns. I want to know more about where they came from and what their development was like. That would be super fascinating. So if you have any of that information, and it's real information, please share it with me. I would love to have it. Common sense would tell us that the full-size gun is part of the same design project as the Compact. And yeah, it absolutely is. But there's still some really interesting and weird stuff going on. So for one thing, the Compact has a different grip shape and texture, more similar to the P2000. Meanwhile, the full-size gun shares a grip shape and texture with the P30. Obviously, this more modern grip shape is superior in every way, at least in my opinion. Your opinion may vary, and that's totally okay. Someone told me beneath the Compact video that Larry Vickers hated the Spider-Man grip and demanded that the Compact have the P2000 grip, which was the one on the prototypes. Now, I have since confirmed that the prototypes did have P2000 grips, at least the early ones. There are quite a few pictures of the prototypes online, unless they're just incredibly detailed fakes that serve no purpose. The pictures are real. But the rest of the story is speculation, and the reason I want to know is that's incredibly interesting. The idea that there's this new modern grip that all of us love. Many people consider this to be one of the best grips, the P30 grip. Larry Vickers sees it and feels it and undoubtedly shoots it and absolutely hates it. And so this one, the Compact that went on to get a government contract, kept that older grip. That's an interesting story. I really like that story. I just want to know if that's actually true. So if you can get me that information, I want that as well. So that's really all the background we have on the HK45. Besides the info about its military adoption, the Compact definitely was adopted. That happened. But we don't really know how often it's used. And if you have any info on that, please let me know. This thing came out in 2006. You either love it or you hate it because it has 2 less rounds than the USP45. Personally, I fall into the former camp. I love this gun. It's one of my favorite 45s. Originally, I preferred the Compact. But as the years and many boxes of ammo have passed, I've come to prefer the full size for a variety of reasons. This is one of the best large 45 autos on the market, and I think it deserves more praise than it receives. I was definitely wrong about the compact being the superior of the two. Still, I'd recommend that you personally try them both. They feel so different to shoot that it can be hard to tell that they're siblings if you've got your eyes closed. But at the same time, as much as I love the full-size gun, folks are also right to criticize a few very strange design elements. Some of them are fucking baffling, and I struggle to understand exactly what the designers were thinking. So let's dig in. Features. The HK45 is a full-size, double-action, single-action, hammer-fired pistol chambered in, you guessed it, 45 ACP. A caliber that, like its advocates, is old, slow, and in the wake of COVID, increasingly hard to find. My particular gun is an older tactical model, meaning it has tritium, night sights, hope you can see those, and a threaded barrel, but the sights aren't suppressor height. That's what you'd find on a newer tactical model. Double action means that with the hammer down, when you pull the trigger, the hammer moves rearward until the end of travel, and then it drops. So the trigger pull is cocking the hammer and releasing it. We are performing two actions, a double action. Because we're using the trigger pull to move the hammer and compressing the mainspring, the double action pull is long and heavy. This is desirable, intentional, and unavoidable, and it functions as a safety feature. When the action cycles after firing the first round, the hammer will then be cocked. The trigger will start in this more rearward position. When you pull the trigger, there will be far less travel and far less force required to pull it. The hammer will fall, firing around. When you pulled the trigger, only one action was performed, a single action. You can also put the gun in single action mode by manually cocking the hammer or working the slide, whatever works for you. And that brings us to the other controls. My particular gun is a safety decocker model. These come in the two LEM modes, safety decocker, just decocker, ambi lever, left side lever, right side lever, etc. The usual HK options. I don't know which version number this is, and even if I looked it up, the HK leprechauns would say that it was incorrect and descend upon the comment sections like a plague of Bitcoin trading locusts. HK people are the worst. The only people worse are the CZ people. You know my thoughts on that. The HK folks are obsessed with minute details and the superiority of their black plastic handguns over all other similar black plastic handguns, while the CZ people have an inferiority complex and have to convince you that their guns are just as good and just as valid. Not just as good, they're better, actually. So whatever version this is, I don't feel like dealing with the HK leprechaun, so that's the version that this is. So when the lever is level, in its neutral position, the safety isn't on. When pushed up, the safety is on. While I wish this gun was decocker only, and I'll surely convert it eventually, I love that you can, with the safety on, cock the hammer and work the action, all with it on safe. This is an excellent additional safety feature because you can take a round out of the chamber, check the chamber, or whatever else you might need to do without taking the gun off safe. That's really cool. I'm also not super bothered by this safety because of how easy it is to flip off. It's harder to flip it on, though. Look at that. Yeah, you have to put some force into that. So it's pretty hard to accidentally hit this safety, but it's really easy to flip it off. Not quite sure how they did that, but I like it. It also has a very short length of travel, kind of like a 1911 safety. I consider the 1911 safety, that's probably the best of all time. And this one is similar in feel and motion. But again, I'd still rather not have a safety. Speaking of checking the chamber, one of the HK leprechauns will surely point out that this gun has a loaded chamber indicator. Yes, that's true, on the side. This is the extractor, and when it's gripping around this red painted portion of it, let's see there, I can't see what I'm doing here. Oh, there we go. When the extractor is gripping around this red painted portion of it, sits proud of the slide, and you can feel it and see it. But I wouldn't rely on that. It's not that it's gonna break, like some folks say. More than that, in a stressful situation or while you're half asleep or whatever, I don't know, you don't want to mistake the condition of the indicator. It's kind of subtle. So that's why I think it's better to just take a look in the chamber, or if it's dark, stick your little fingers in there to feel the condition of the chamber. Back to the safety decocker. When the hammer is cocked, pulled down on the lever, wow, that's a satisfying noise, and the gun is now decocked. More accurately, it drops the hammer to the half-cock position, that first notch. But either way, you now have the long double-action trigger pull between your finger and putting a 45 slug through the floor or your tender foot. I really dislike safeties, like I said, on hammer-fire guns with decockers. The slide release is ambi and very large. I like it a lot. It feels great. Works great. It stops the slide. It releases the slide. A plus. Speaking of the slide, it's sort of like a giant P30 slide. See what I mean? Same overall aesthetic. It's got the diagonal grippy cuts and overall vibe. I love it. It looks fantastic. And the compact's like that too. These sights are Meprolite tritium night sights. They're fine. Not my favorite. Not my favorite hold either, but they absolutely do the job. I wish they were Trijicon HD XRs. I'm sure I'll get around to swapping them out one day. The HD XRs are my favorite night sights. Newer versions of the tactical model have suppressor height sights, which I think most folks are going to prefer. I like that this gun is a slightly lower profile. It's already massive. Probably doesn't need to get more massive, so I'm cool with standard height sights on there. The barrel is threaded so that you can mount a can. The threads are 16x1 left hand because HK just does shit like that. Why? Why would they go with a thread pitch that is actually useful that we can use to mount shit on the expensive gun that we just bought? Our threaded barrel is 5.2 inches long. The whole gun weighs 31.2 ounces with an empty mag. That's not light, but not particularly heavy either for a large 45. Speaking of the barrel, it's got polygonal rifling. It's a cold hammer forged HK barrel, so it's an incredible barrel. Also, it uses the O-ring system here. And the reason HK likes this O-ring is it helps with the repeatability of lockup and supposedly aids accuracy. I've never tested the mechanical accuracy of an HK, but I mean, it hits where I'm pointing it. So, you know, if they say it makes it more accurate, maybe it does, but I'm not a good enough shot to actually experience that. And I don't make a habit of putting pistols in a bench rest and really testing that mechanical accuracy because I just don't think it's valuable. This gun holds 10 rounds. When folks discuss the gun, that's what they talk about. We'll discuss the effects of such a limited capacity on performance later. Oh, also, these magazines are somewhat slim, sort of a stack and a half. There's one next to an 8-round 1911 magazine. For only 2 extra rounds, though, that's very fucking thick, isn't it? However, the grip is thinner than a USP45 or a Mark 23, of course, or the FNX 45 or Glock 21. In fact, it's about the same thickness as a 1911 with slim grips. I'll include a detailed photo to show that a little bit better. So yeah, you're getting that sort of thickness, but with 2 extra rounds, and the HK weighs a lot less than the 1911. The HK's grip, it's this P30 Spider-Man grip. It's got decent texturing, although it's a bit worn down on mine from use. We've got fairly slight finger grooves and cuts and swells in all the right places. Many folks consider this to be one of the best grips on the market. I'm definitely one of those people. The magazine releases the newer HK paddle with levers that sit in cutouts in the trigger guard as opposed to the ones outside the trigger guard that you see on the 45 compact. The paddle is ambi. You can either press the lever with your thumb on the left side, which makes for a sort of traditional technique, or on the other side with your index finger. Using the index finger is, for me, the best way and makes this the best magazine release method that I've ever encountered. I wish every gun had a paddle magazine release. Let's take a look inside the HK45. This one's got 4,000 documented rounds through it, approximately. Just slightly over that. Notice I said documented. That's because this is a gun that I've had for a while, and in the beginning, I did not keep super precise records on how many rounds I was shooting through guns. In fact, from the early days, I don't have a clue. Before I started the channel, I don't have a fucking clue how many rounds I put through some of these guns. But once I started doing the channel, I became very meticulous about keeping records. But this one's been around longer than that, so don't really know how many it's got through it. But there's 4,000 and some change written down in my little logbook. So that's what we're going with. Also, that's nothing for an HK45. This thing has barely begun its life. Also, because I've had this gun a bit longer, it hasn't been subjected to the standard cleaning schedule that other things have. It has for the last couple years, but prior to that, I just kind of cleaned it whenever I felt like it, which was actually more frequent than the schedule. All right, so how do we take it apart? Well, first, make sure the gun is empty. I hope I don't need to tell any of you that. Then cock the hammer and make sure the thread protector isn't on the gun. Now, when I'm not filming a video, I keep the thread protector on this gun. You don't want to damage those threads, and they are fairly delicate. So there's this squarish cutout on the slide. We need to line that up with this portion of the slide release here. So we're going to do that this way. And then with your index finger on the other side, push the axle of the slide release through. And then grab it on this side. And you can pull it right out. You can now easily remove the slide from the frame. When you're taking the barrel out, be careful to mind those threads. Dragging them across the slide could cause some damage. You don't want that. I don't see any abnormal wear, but it does look like I need to get some lube on this gun. That's a little too dry. Let's look at the frame first. Looks pretty normal. I'll include some pictures of the wear as I always do. There's a little bit more wear on the frame rails than we saw when we looked at the compact, but the compact also had less rounds through it, and I've shot hotter ammo out of the full-size gun. We see some wear on the bar here, but nothing out of the ordinary. As with all HKs, the plastic on either side of the rails is wearing away. There's no way around this. I've never seen an HK that did not wear this way. The barrel shows more wear, but again, not abnormal. HK's surface finish seems to wear faster than that from other manufacturers, but beneath the surface color, the steel is impregnated with finish, so there's not a greater risk of corrosion just because the color is wearing through. By the way, this is the original HK O-ring. HK gives you extras, but I never seem to need them. These are fairly robust. I'm sure that I'll have to change it in a few years when the rubber starts to get brittle from age. Also, this gun is not the cleanest right now, but I will say that a bit more wear is visible when it had a nice deep clean. But I'm very much trying to stay on the cleaning schedule, so I don't want to wipe off too much of this grossness because this thing's just not due for it yet. The slide wear also looks fairly normal for an HK with this round count. There's a little more than I would expect near this edge by the ejection port. That might be from these tool marks. I'm not sure why, but this particular HK45 has more tool marks inside the slide than my other HKs. They didn't seem to do as thorough of a job cleaning that up on this one. But that's nitpicking. Everything looks fine, and 4,000 rounds is nothing for one of these guns. Not noteworthy at all. I'm sure it's got another 250,000 rounds left in it. So let's talk about this this nylon ring here. You can see there's definitely some noticeable wear here on the block at the back of the spring assembly. So slightly more than I would expect to see, but I don't think it's a problem at all. And if it is, you can just replace this whole assembly. It's not that expensive. But again, this isn't crazy, just a hair more than I would like to see. This nylon ring is what HK used as a replacement for the dual spring system in the USP. Undoubtedly, the nylon ring is cheaper, but it seems to be very effective as well. This gun has a mild recoil impulse for a 45, and this is a delightfully simple alternative to that more complicated system. Some of the HK Leprechauns online say that they definitely feel a difference between the two recoil systems. Personally, I really don't, but there's also no HK45 dual spring system that I know of for a direct apples to apples comparison. But I think the nylon ring, it works okay. It's just fine. All the HKs that I presently have use this system. All right, so let's put it all back together again. And mind those barrel threads on the way back in too. And I'll get some more lube on it later. Like so. Check function. Perfect. How is the gun performed? Well, the HK45, it's offered flawless performance, with one exception that wasn't its fault. I had some European ammo, it was kind of cheap, and it caused the same malfunction in every gun I tested it in. PCCs, Glocks, HKs, 1911s, it didn't matter. Nothing could cycle that ammo reliably, so I don't take that as a mark against any of the guns that malfunctioned with it. The ammo was just very fucked up. Other than that, this gun will cycle anything, clean, dirty, dry, it doesn't care. This is very reliable and robust. I trust this gun. And I recommend it without hesitation to somebody who's looking for a very large 45 that will always work. Earlier we discussed the nylon recoil buffer. This gun has a very pleasant recoil impulse that I find somewhat addictive. This is one of those guns that can keep you at the range all day. It still produces that satisfying 45 thump, but there isn't a ton of muzzle flip, and I find that I'm really not that much slower with this gun than I am with a 9mm. It's a great feeling to, feel that push from a 45 but still have enough control over the gun to push out those rapid strings and triples. So I really like that feeling. I don't know if it's the nylon ring, the excellent grip, or the overall massive size of the gun, but this is a very soft recoiling 45. One of the softest recoiling large 45s. It's noticeably softer than the Glock 21, slightly gentler than the FNX 45, although I do find that the FN has slightly less muzzle flip, so it's maybe a wash there. But more importantly, I find that this gun has substantially less recoil than a 1911. Plastic guns flex, so I always feel like they have less recoil than guns with metal frames. To me, it feels like this HK has, 30% less recoil than my 1911, firing the same loads. The 1911 feels like it has less muzzle flip, but the advantage is still overwhelmingly to the HK. And you get 2 extra rounds and far less weight. The grip shape also helps with the firing experience. Sometimes I wish the texture was a little bit more aggressive, but this is probably better for a long range session, this more muted texture. And it doesn't rub your side when you've got it in a holster at the range. But a little more grip, it might not have hurt. However, I love everything else about the grip. These finger grooves are incredibly well designed. They lock your fingers in place in a more comfortable and natural way than something like a 3rd or 4th gen Glock. Though I certainly don't mind the Glock finger grooves either. In fact, I kind of like them, but these are superior. There's not much of an undercut beneath the trigger guard, but there really can't be because of the magazine release paddles. But I love the way the web of your hand locks in back here. That more than makes up for it. I feel like I have a very good grip on this gun through recoil, and I think that gives me some speed. With the compact, I feel like my performance is mildly hampered by the general feeling that my grip isn't great when I start to sweat with this thing in the South Carolina sun. There's just not a lot of texturing there. The trigger on the HK45, it's okay. It's pretty good for an HK, but not that great compared to some other hammer-fired guns. It's not going to compare to something like a Beretta. The double action is long and plasticky. You can probably hear it creaking. But it isn't heavy, and that makes up for it. I do just fine with that first shot, and yeah, I don't really mind it. Listen to that creak, though. Yeah, that's something. The single action feels a lot like the P30, but with a much shorter reset. The P30 is one of the worst triggers I've felt, to the point of being funny. In fact, let's grab it and take a look at it. So the P30, long take up, incredibly squishy break. It's very ill-defined with a super long reset. Why is that reset that long? That makes no sense. The HK45 trigger shares some of those characteristics, but not all of them. There's a lot of take up, then you hit the wall. There's a sort of sponginess. It's like you can almost feel the trigger flexing. Oh, that's the other thing about the P30. The trigger feels like it's actually bending. There's a little bit of trigger flex here. The wall is super mushy. Tons of slop. I'm moving through what you would feel as the wall right now. That's all slop. Very squishy. Then the trigger breaks. Very squishy. One more time. But let's see the reset. Now for an HK, that's very short. I hope you can see how much shorter that is than the P30. One more time. Man, I really like the reset. That's excellent. So right now, an HK Leprechaun is appearing in the comments to tell us that the trigger parts are the same in the HK45C and probably the P30 and a few of the USPs and whatever else. That may be so, but they are measurably different on my examples. For instance, the trigger on my full-size 45 has trigger flex and all the squish. The break is much lighter. On my compact, the trigger is very firm with a firm wall, and the break is substantially heavier. By substantially, I mean, I don't know, 3/4 of a pound. It is noticeable though. The P30 has a completely different reset length and weight, so just fucking get off my dick. The triggers, there are some differences there, even if they share parts. Overall, the trigger is a mixed bag here. Now, the paddle mag release is insanely fast and offers the fastest mag changes. I feel very confident reloading HKs. I wish I felt that confident with the buttons, but all buttons are positioned in such a way that I have to move my hand to get my thumb over to them. So this feels really good to me. The sights are just okay. I don't like the sight picture of the Mepper lights much. The front sight's a little too low and chunky, and I don't like the hold. I need to stick some HDXRs on there. So now, the bad. And what's bad is it's bad. Let's start with the slightly less bad first. Inside the trigger guard, there is a little trough that the bottom of the trigger rides in. I'll put up some photos. This is said to prevent you from getting a glove caught between the guard and the trigger. I often shoot with gloves on, and this happened to me once in a never. I've never seen this happen. I've never experienced it, but I guess it happens enough to warrant the addition of that trough. Well, the trough fucking sucks. My finger rubs against it until it bleeds. At least it used to. Now I've shot the trigger trough gun so much that it doesn't really bother me at all. My skin is now resistant to it, but it's not the greatest thing. It needs to go. The worst thing, however, is the placement of this lever. The P30 and the P2000 have the best decocker known to humankind. It's this little button on the back of the gun beneath the hammer. It gets no better than this. The HK45s, they don't have this. They have this fucking awful lever. This lever bashes my thumb over and over and over and causes a blister. It sucks, and I hate it. Why, HK? Why do this? Why make this lever that shape? It's just in the way to the point that I may just move the decocking lever to the other side of the gun and just see what that's like and learn to do it with my index finger or something. So originally I said that I preferred the compact to the full size. This is no longer the case. There are some things about the compact that absolutely drive me crazy. Its benefits used to outweigh those problems, but time has taught me that I was wrong. Those things, they suck too hard. I can't deal with it. So which should you choose? Well, if we're discussing the tactical models, you can't carry either one, so just get the big one. But if you're planning to carry them and you're getting the standard models, there might still be a case for the compact. So here are the issues with the small one. The grip is too slick. It sucks. But more than that, remember how I said the decocking lever on the full-size gun hurts? Well, on the big one, it causes a minor blister. It could be worse. On the compact gun, it slowly wears a hole in my flesh. I hate it. As a result, I really most often shoot the larger gun these days. I still like the small one. It's fun in small doses, but the larger gun is far more comfortable. All right, last of all, we have to address the magazine capacity. I've saved this for last. I'm torn about it. On one hand, do 2 rounds really make that much of a difference? And we've already established that the HK45 is as thin as a 1911 with thin grips, and notably thinner than one with regular grips. And we've established that the grip is incredibly comfortable and would have to be thicker to accommodate those 2 additional rounds. The thing is, the USP holds 2 additional rounds, and I certainly don't find the grip to be too thick. The same thing goes for the Glock 21, and it holds 13. I really think HK could have kept a very comfortable grip while giving us 2 additional rounds. I think it could have been done. And that would be my preference, obviously, to have more bullets in the magazine. But does the capacity make the HK45 unusable? That's what you'd think reading some of the forums or Reddit. Of course not. This is still an awesome and perfectly effective gun. I think the capacity only feels limited because it's so easy to shoot the gun well. You can just burn through those 10 rounds pretty damn fast. And again, we're getting a thinner gun in the bargain. The capacity is less than ideal, but reasonably adequate. Maybe it's a trade-off in your mind. I kind of feel the same way about the Glock 43X. Do I wish it held more rounds? Of course I do, but it gets the job done as is with the factory mags. Final thoughts. Despite some of the very strange design elements, the HK45 is one of the best large 45s on the market. It's a breeze to shoot. The trigger is okay. The paddle mag release is outstanding, and the gun really isn't excessively heavy or thick. I like it. But like many HKs from this era and before, the gun has some very strange design elements. The magazine capacity is an odd choice, even if it doesn't hamper the gun very much. The sights wouldn't be my first choice, but they don't use these anyway on this particular model. And the decocking lever straight up fucking sucks. It is not good. Oh, and that trigger trough, that's got to go too. As with the HK45 Compact, the good, it very much outweighs the bad, and even more so with the full-size gun than with the Compact. Between the 2 HK45 options, this is the superior gun in my opinion and experience. These guns are very robust, and they look cool. I like mine a lot. Just, if you're interested in this sort of thing, you gotta give one of these a try. It's also worth noting that this is one of the guns that kicked off the tactical 45 market. In fact, this might be the first. Now everybody makes something sort of like this. If you're looking for this kind of gun, this is absolutely one of the ones you should take a look at. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you soon. Good night.